Hey everybody, we're going to get started in just a few minutes. Thanks for being here. Really excited to have everybody on the call tonight. All right, let's get this going. It's nice to see everybody out there. Welcome everybody. This is a really exciting night. Every time we get together on the virtual interwebs together right now, it feels really special. So I just wanted to first introduce myself. My name is Kirk Kubasek. I'm one of the steering committee's members for the Philly Drum Project. And I'm here to help host this event tonight along with my buddy Mike Ragusa. How you doing tonight, Mike?
Doing great. Great to be here.
Great. Thanks for helping us out, helping me host this thing. It's kind of a weird thing sometimes when you're hosting and you're in your own room, but you got all these people out there. So it's nice to have someone to share the burden with. Although this is really a privilege, so let me put it that way. So again, we're the Philly Drum Project. We are a nonprofit based out of Philadelphia. We provide free drumming programming in the Philadelphia region, designed to connect drummers through various forms of what I like to call fellowship, or just hanging out, talking about drums, talking about our experiences on the drums, sharing our skills and our talents with one another through different events where we offer sometimes like the opportunity for someone to come in and just play a short presentation, or like tonight we have somebody who's going to be doing about an hour or so. And then we also sometimes have larger clinic events where we host either an artist for a long period of time, or we have multiple artists. We've even put on, in the non-pandemic times, we've put on some larger drum festival events. And we also put on some educational style events as well. Mike, maybe you can tell everybody a little bit about kind of the educational side of what Philly Drum Project does.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, like Kirk said, it's a little bit tougher for us to be doing our educational programming at the moment with the pandemic and everything. But pre-pandemic, we were pretty regularly putting on an annual high school like drum camp style event with in conjunction with University of the Arts. So we'd get like 10 to 12 high school students that could apply for free. The event was free to everyone who got involved in it, and they'd go through a whole day of drum instruction through clinics, private lessons, and like master classes, things like that. And then that would all culminate in the end of the day with them splitting up into trios and being instructed by one of the instructors we had there. And they'd have to come up with drum set trio music. So they'd have to learn and rehearse and then perform for an audience at the end and make it interesting, make it melodic and not just three people banging on drums. And it was a really cool experience to get those kids involved and give them some further education. We also do a redrum program that's focused around like our gear satellite of the organization, where we'll take in donations of like worse for wear kits or even good kits, depends on what we can get our hands on. And we'll refurb them, we'll put them in community centers that are a little more underserved, and we'll run a program that we used to call rhythm sessions. It was a 10-week program. We'd put an instructor in there or a couple instructors and have free lessons for the community, ranging from like complete beginner to intermediate, and just getting people involved and having fun with all that.
Yeah, so we have a lot of different kind of arms and tentacles to our organization. That's actually the way it's meant to be. We are by design, a socially democratic organization. We have this steering committee that meets every 2 weeks, and we talk about what we're going to do, and we pass motions and we nominate people for different things, and we come up with new programs, and we talk about upcoming events like this. So there's a team of us that have all been together through this pandemic, trying to make all these events happen, and it's just been really special. And I just want to say that the audience side of this is so big, and the fact that you're here tonight, joining in this space together, creating this intentional community, and really holding space for percussionists and drummers to kind of be in a safe space together is really a huge thing. And it's been very therapeutic just for me. Like, I just find myself very endeared to anybody that I come into contact with in this space. And I think that speaks to the power of this community. So yeah, Mike, thank you for sharing some of those things that we do overall as an organization. And just to give you a heads up of what we have coming up, we just had our Open Drum event back in January. Open Drum is something we're trying to do on a quarterly basis right now, where we invite people to come in and do short 10-minute 10-minute presentations. In those 10 minutes, you could do whatever you like on the drums, and people do everything from teaching about rudiments and teaching about how to work on some sort of coordination to giving you like different systems on improvisation or playing along to a song. It really is a great opportunity. It's kind of like an open mic. So we try to do that once every 3 months. We do one of these Beats, Brews, and Banter events every 3 months. And then we do something called a quarterly Philly Drum Projects Presents event. And our last Philly Drum Projects event presenter was David Garibaldi from Tower of Power. So we have another quarterly coming up in the end of March. We are going to announce the artist for that shortly. So be looking for an email and social media posts about that. I am putting a link in the chat, letting everybody know that if you enjoy the programming that you're receiving tonight or anytime from Philly Drum Project, we are a nonprofit. We are fully member funded. We get, for the most part, we've received a few grants in the past, but for the last several years, we've totally gotten by on giving campaigns through our membership. We used to make everybody, if you wanted to be a member, we would ask you to pay dues, but we actually don't have any membership dues anymore. So if you'd like to join Philly Drum Project as a member, it's very simple. You just navigate to phillydrumproject.org and go to become a member. So I am also going to throw that in the chat. So you'll see the first link here. Let's see. I'll do this so everybody knows. Donate here and sign up for membership here. All right. So other than that, we are going to shortly start talking to AJ Hall. AJ, I think, well, actually, I'd love to talk to one of our members. Jerry's, yes, thank you, Jerry. I hope that we have some sort of aggressive membership donation matching thing coming up in the future. I guess before we talk about AJ Hall, there's one more piece of this that I left out. And Mike, you can help me on this, which is basically the pitch to get involved, because we are socially democratic, whatever that means. Basically, we're designed to be whatever we want to be together collectively. So if you want this organization to do something, to bring a certain artist in, if you want to spearhead a project like one of the things that Mike mentioned, like refurbishing drums and giving them to people that need them, or finding a community to help in an educational capacity, whether it be an after-school program or a one-time event. We need people and ideas to do that. Our steering committee is 8 or 9 people at a meeting every 2 weeks. And so as we continue in our success through this virtual platform, which we're very excited about, we've had a lot of great viewership through the events we've done in 2020 and now in 2021. But we need to continue to grow. And now that the world is kind of in this space of everybody thinking about the next step, it's really important to try to grab as many helping hands as we can. So if you like what you see tonight and you're inspired to do something with it, reach out to us. Hit us up through our Gmail. Get us on Facebook, Instagram. We're hoping to start a TikTok one day. We'll see how that goes. But these are all things that we need help with. And Mike, do you have anything that you want to say about that before we
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Kirk. Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit to that. So Kirk mentioned we're member funded and we are member run at this point. So the way that our organization works is our steering committee is elected once every 2 years. We hold general elections that are open to everyone. And the elections are for steering committee, and then there's 2 co-chairs on the committee. They just exist to be the last line if needed to settle any like internal confusion or anything like that, just to keep things moving forward smoothly. But ideally, like the dream of the project here is to have everyone have a voice in what we're doing, and you should be able to bring, like, as a member, just bring forth the things that you think are missing in the area, the things you want to see, whether it be like education-wise, gear-wise, whatever. Just if you have a crazy idea of like just something drum-related in the area or music education-related that you'd like to see happen, there's nothing too crazy to pitch to us, and we'd love to get more people involved. We do have in an ideal world when we're not confined to our homes, we have like more regular open to the public meetings where we can have like our gear committee meet up and people can get involved in that. You don't have to be on our steering committee. Ideally, we'd have more membership just coming out and hanging out and chatting about ideas and nerding out about drums and just moving things forward for us. So yeah, we want you to get more involved. Whatever ideas you have, send them to us, talk to us, connect on Gmail, Facebook, wherever. And yeah, we'd like to hear from you more.
Thank you, Mike. So I learned about AJ Hall for the first time actually not too long ago from one of our steering committee members. And I would love if Brendan, if he's available, I know you might be busy in your house with background noise and stuff, but Brendan, if you're able to, would you be willing to just kind of tell us about how you discovered AJ and kind of brought that to the steering committee? I think this is a great example of how we work as an organization, and the way that we find people is simply by being like, check this person out that I saw on Instagram or whatever. Brendan, are you there right now? Let's see. Okay. Oh, Brendan, I'm going to unmute you. Give me 1 second. You know what, Brendan? I'm not sure if I can unmute you. I think that might be one of the rules of... Here, I'll ask you to unmute. Hold on. All right, well...
Got it.
Oh, there you are.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Brendan Locker.
I have way too many tabs open on this computer and I cannot find the Zoom window. Anyways, yeah, AJ Hall. I mean, so I'm one of the people here at Philly Drum Project. While I love acoustic drums and messing around on my drum kit, in the drumming space, I would consider myself more of I guess a hip hop producer. Like for me, it's about drum machines and DAWs. So going down that avenue of collecting drum breaks and sample packs and making my own beats, following a guy out of New York who on his live stream swears by AJ Hall's sounds. And so I started following AJ Hall and he's incredibly active on Instagram. And as I'll tell you about, starting to get more and more love from the hit makers in the community right now and in the music industry. So AJ's had a big year and just puts forth a great product. And seems really passionate about sharing what he's learned in this really open, amazing way. And it's tough to not root for a guy like this, like incredibly talented, incredibly gifted, focused on sound technique and sharing. So it's like rooting for this guy, want him to, continue sharing and growing his fan base. So I'm here as a fan first and foremost, and I'm excited everyone else wanted him to be here too. I think everyone will like this.
Awesome.
And he'll tell you, but make sure you follow him on Instagram. Like he's got daily stuff that he's doing on there and showcasing and sharing. And obviously you'll if you go down the rabbit hole, you'll see all the drum packs he has available and stuff. And he does custom drums for people. And he's basically, he's there for the community. It's pretty dope.
Yeah. And I can't remember if you just said this, because I'm listening to what you're saying and I'm making sure that everything on Zoom is set. But the other half of AJ, which immediately kind of clicked for me, was that he is or was the touring drummer for Jon Cleary, the New Orleans pianist. And when I then looked up Jon Cleary, I found AJ and I said, "Oh man, I've seen this guy. He plays open-handed before. I need to look into this guy." So I think we've done enough beating around the bush. I think, why don't we introduce AJ Hall, get him up on here, and AJ, you out there in the netherworlds?
What's up, everybody?
All right, let me just find you, and I'm gonna spotlight you. Yeah, let's get that. There you go. Hey AJ, great to have you, man.
Live up to that, man. Good God, bro. That was a hell of an intro, man. I hope I can live up to this in this little stream we got going on. Good God.
Whoop, whoop, whoop.
Well, thank you so much, and it's been like a pleasure working with AJ so far, everybody. Like, just getting this all together tonight. The last thing I would say that piggybacks off of Brendan is that this is really exciting because we've never done something like this before, where we are looking at drumming from this perspective, really looking at what it takes in the studio to get your drums to sound the way you want and to create something very, well, in this case, on the fly. And there's so much to be learned here. So AJ, why don't you just hop into it, and I'll just be here with Mike to ask you some questions along the way.
Cool. All right. So I'm assuming in the chat and everybody watching, I'm assuming we've got a lot of people out there that are drummers that either used to gig heavily and maybe don't somewhat now. I know I'm definitely in that category. Although I live in Florida, so I'm still kind of gigging, which is it's a whole nother conversation to be had. But yeah, I mean, touring, like I said, like the guys said, I'm kind of leading this double life right now where I'm a hip hop producer who makes drums, and I'm also kind of in my, it's been a year since I've done it, but I still consider myself a touring drummer, because everything's being booked until it's not. So I'm kind of half producer that makes drums and half just hired grunt touring drummer that sings background vocals sometimes with Jon Cleary. So, I guess, I can't emphasize enough, like, if you're a drummer that's out of work and you haven't used this whole almost year off that we've had to try and figure something else out, one, you should have done it, and two, you've still got time, because it's really going to be a minute before stuff fully opens back up and cats that are making a living playing drums in clubs and on tour, it's going to be a minute before job again. So I would, if you're trying to figure out something during this time as it relates to drumming, keep doing it. And if you haven't, start like today. And you can make drum breaks, you can teach lessons. If you love if you love Steve Ferrone and all you listen to is Steve Ferrone, start a YouTube channel dedicated to Steve Ferrone's career. You know what I mean? You just might get some ads on it, you just might get some traction, but you just got to stick with it, because this new normal is going to be for a while, man. I think, at least. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. Like, this drum break thing came out of, I had already started it before. Like, I started making drum breaks in October of 2019, and it basically carried me all the way up through the summer that year Was it October? No, it was kind of August, I think. It was like August of 2019, and then getting all the way up into 2020, I had already dropped 2 drum break sample packs, and I was just gonna. It was just kind of my side hustle away from touring. But when touring got ripped away, like it did from everybody in March of 2020, I just had to go full throttle with it. You know, I just had to absolutely relentlessly, like, all right, this I've already kind of dipped my toe in the water. Let me just you know, cannonball into this pool right quick. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, and I'll be happy to get out there and tour and play funk whenever the time comes. For now this is where I'm at, and it's proved to be very fruitful for my career, and I'm more or less making a living at it now, you know. So it's about a year and change, and it's actually starting to see results. So that's just for anybody who starts a YouTube channel and uploads one drum cover and it doesn't go viral, and they're like, this sucks, I'm not doing this anymore. You know, you gotta snowball that thing, man. You gotta get up there, you know.
Well, so thank you so much for that advice. And I was curious, like, since you're throwing the word breakbeat around, would you mind defining that in your own, you know, in your own words, for maybe anybody here that doesn't know exactly what you're talking about? And also sample pack, since those are, I think they're like essential to the conversation tonight.
Definitely. And by the way, these 2 things, more importantly, sample pack, that's part of a bigger conversation that I want to have later, because right now hip hop is in this place where sampling old records is really hard to do for major label productions. Like if you want to put out a song with, I don't know, Kanye West or somebody that everybody in the chat would probably know, if you want to produce a beat for like a very famous hip hop artist, it's getting harder and harder to clear samples, because one, people are getting in trouble for not trying to clear them, and then the artist will come back around and say, hey, we want 60% of this song, or you legally have to take it down. Or it's just getting harder to find the artists that you're taking these samples from. So right. I'll back up out of that because we'll talk more about that later. Drum breaks or break beats to me is what came out of old records from the 60s and 70s, right? Old funk records and soul records, and like, so honestly, some fusion records in the 70s and like prog rock records in the 70s. It's just the sound of a very basic groove, but processed in a way that really, really catches your ear. And I say catches your ear because the 60s and 70s, just the drums on records back then sounded way different than they did in the late 70s, 80s, and 90s. I'm sure everybody can understand that, right? Like the drums in the 80s we all have our own opinions on that, you know? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the drums in the 60s and 70s, they just had a smack to them, and that was partly the way that they were recorded, and it's just partly the way where black music and funk music was back then. It was just so much more about dancing than it ever has been since then. So breakbeats is, the way I think about it, is just what it's like me playing the drums as if it's the moment in a 3-minute funk song from the 70s where the drums are soloed out. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense? Like you hear those old funk records, those old disco records, even the old Meters records. There's a bunch of moments on those Meters records where it's just a part in the song where it's just drums, you know? So hip hop producers in the 80s and 90s started sampling those moments on those old records because the drums were so hitting and so cool sounding. So now I'm retroactively being inspired by that and making my own drum breaks or break beats in that same vein, you know? So that's kind of what I mean by that.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I know like Funky Drummer is like a perfect example of that. It's been used like a million times. Or the first one was the Amen break, right? I think that was the original.
Those two, although the Amen break didn't have that much, the Amen break has its, it got its stride in like house music and like jungle, you know, UK stuff.
Right. Drum and bass and everything.
Exactly, because the tempo of it isn't really like a rap tempo. The funky drummer break, the funky drum break has been sampled, I think, even more times than it's been documented. I think there's still recordings where that's layered into the track somewhere that haven't even been jotted down yet or accounted for. Because that it's perfect. Like you hear the recording of it and it's just perfection. Like everything about that recording of the drums is perfect. Clyde Stubblefield, for those of you guys who don't know, Clyde Stubblefield used to play with James Brown. Here we go. My goodness. Yeah, so that's probably yeah, exactly. Now you speeding it up to do the EDM thing. Yo, that's killing. Yo, so killing, man. Yeah, so that drum break is just like, I'm trying to think of a parallel. It's like the my music parallels aren't working right now. It's the 96 Bulls of drum breaks.
Yes.
It's the absolute, like, I don't know. Everything about it is perfect. The sound, the playing, the ambience around it, the reverb and everything. Yeah. So anyway, me being a student of just funk playing in general, and me being toured with various funk bands and R&B bands, you got to play pocket in real time and make people feel good that moment when they come to watch you, you know? So that's translated into the way that I make drum breaks, and that's I think is the real reason why they've taken off like they have, because a lot of the guys that make drum breaks, they're either sound engineers that just hire a drummer to play some stuff, or they're drummers that mix the drum breaks themselves, but their playing isn't really informed by like being out there on the road and being in the trenches and like really laying into the instrument. You know what I mean? So it's kind of where I'm at with that.
And I guess one question to dig into that just for a second, like, would you say, what was the most valuable way? Like, are you saying that like developing time for yourself, like, and feel, those are the two things that really brought you to this point?
That and it's just this is gonna sound so excuse my language, this is gonna sound so douchey, but it's the fact that I have the courage to mix the drums the way that I do, because it's honestly just the way that I hear the drums and want them to sound before I even mix them, you know?
Okay.
I've always heard drum sounds like the ones that I'm making now in my head. Like I want just the drum track of a song to make people go like, whoa, what the hell is that? You know, like I've always been in studio sessions and mixing sessions and just situations where I'm not in control of what the drums sound like for the end product. I've just been in so many of those situations where it's like, yo, I'm smacking the shit out of these drums right now, and it just doesn't sound like I know it could sound, you know? So that's me to the other half of making those drum breaks, is like learning how to make them sound like I want them to sound. And it's much closer to those old 60s and 70s drum breaks than most like trained Full Sail grads would know how to EQ and compress things to make them sound like, you know. So,
awesome. So I guess with that said, you want to get to it, and let's get inside this process. You want to? It's
called Beats, Brews, and Banter. I got a fridge in here. I need to open one up. Hold up.
Okay, yeah, and just a reminder, everybody, it is Beats, Brews, and Banter, and if you want to imbibe in whatever beverage of your choice, I highly recommend you do so. Also, this is a good opportunity to let people know that we do have the opportunity for you to ask questions in the chat. I'm seeing people putting in suggestions, and right now people are asking for an example of your sample. So that's what we're going to get into with AJ. We're going to, he's going to show us his whole process from playing the drums to editing them to mixing them. So I'm going to mute myself so you can hear AJ go through all of this.
All right. So basically I'm going to, and if you guys can see my screen right here, This is my Logic. This is where I record everything. I'll take the camera up and actually show you guys the full studio later. But here's an example of a drum break that I made for a client yesterday, I believe. No, 2 days ago. Let me see. Yeah. Here's an example of a drum break that I made for a client 2 days ago. Let's see where we at. If I can find the folder. There we go. All right. So I'm just going to play you a couple that I made from scratch yesterday using that kit over here and all this gear that I have, and then I'll actually make one from scratch again for you guys so you can see the whole process. All right, here we go. That's actually not a good example. Let me show you one that's hidden. All right, let me play you another one. Play you one more, and then I'll go over to the drums, all right? Everything sounding okay out there?
Yeah,
Good boy.
we can hear it. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, is it hot?
I know it's
Oh,
good.
it's not too hot. Are you sending the signal directly into Zoom? Or are you going from your microphone into your like from your monitors?
Signal directly into Zoom, but I can turn it down. Is it like really loud?
Oh no, it's fine. It's not too loud at all.
Okay, cool.
I was just asking. Yep, you're good. Keep going.
Nice pocket.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right, so let's make one from scratch, shall we? Let's do it. So I've got, I won't go too much into the technical aspects of it, but right now the mics that I'm running is one kick mic, one top snare mic, one bottom snare mic, hi-hat, two overheads, but they're two mono overheads. They're not like over here and over here. They're just kind of both above me. So kick, snare top, bottom snare, hi-hat, two overheads, the two toms, and then one mic that's right in front of the bass drum facing my knee that I call a crush mic, and then one room mic that actually sits over here. All right, so check it out. Here we go. Let's record a drum break. All right, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
So, actually. All right, so right now I've got my tempo set at 88 BPM. Let me just listen to it because I got to come up with an actual idea of what I'm going to play. So y'all are getting to see the complete process. This is completely rehearsed, none of this. No script. Here we go. My bad. All right. All right, I know what I'm going to play. Just a basic hip-hop groove. Ready? Here we go. So you guys notice I actually left out beat one of that next bar, right? And the reason for that is I learned the hard way making so many drum breaks. I had to learn the hard way that if you don't leave out beat one and you try to make a perfect loop, then you end up with that little bit of that kick drum hit left over in the drum break when you're trying to loop it, and it becomes a pain. So I've actually learned the art of not playing beat one, if that makes any sense. All right, so let me go back over to the desk. I'll show y'all how I mix it from scratch. All right, here we go.
Did you also have to be like aware of any bleed over from like sustain from cymbals? Is that another part of that whole whole?
Yeah, well, I mean, the cymbals, it doesn't really matter that much because you're dealing with, like, you know, you're kind of sorry, I didn't switch the camera. You're kind of dealing with, you know, these breaks aren't meant to be put on like a Steely Dan record to begin with, you know? So the grimy characteristic of them and how unpredictable and weird they are is part of the whole appeal, really, of them.
Oh, okay. So I got it. Keep it dirty.
That's honestly the reason why I didn't start making drum breaks earlier, because like everybody else who watches YouTube, I was under the impression that you had to invest $5,000 into one mic and then another 400 into another mic and, you know, all this insane stuff. And really, none of this stuff in the 60s and 70s was recorded on like the state-of-the-art stuff at the time, at least not the stuff that people love, at least not the breaks that people love. There's stuff from the 70s that's crystal clear, but the real grimy stuff, it was recorded on bad tape machines and unbalanced rooms and all this stuff. Like, there's beauty in that, you know? So here we go. All right. So the first thing I have to do, is zoom in on the kick transient. What I mean by the kick transient is the first waveform, if you can see right here. I have to zoom in on that, and I have to move it exactly to the start of the bar line, right? So you zoom in as much as you possibly can, and then you chop it right at that first kick drum hit. Because that way, every time the loop circles back around, you're going to get a perfect loop. If I did play it right, the pocket might be messed up because sometimes I do have to do a couple of takes to get the fills sounding exactly the way they need to. But anyway, all right, let's just hear it raw. I have a little bit of compression on it, but let's just hear it. I'm going to put one more compressor on it just to beef up the signal a little bit. All right, let's see if, sorry about that. Let's see if it's loopable. Let's see if it's loopable. It's not a bad loop, all right? Not a bad loop. So we take that, we just chop off the ends of it, we get it nice and clean. So this is, let me delete this stuff over here. This is the entire drum break as is, right? We got snare top, snare bottom, you know, all the mics. So here we go. First thing I do is I go into the kick channel. I just add a noise gate, right? A noise gate is just something that stops the signal from coming through unless there's something really strong coming through the mic, AKA the kick hits, right? So that's all I want to come through. So I'm gonna isolate the kick mic. Here we go.
Hey, AJ. Got a couple of quick questions from people here. One was asking what type of mics you're using, and another one is asking like what kind of plugins you're using.
Okay. So here's the real juice. All right. This is we're about to have charts right now. As I take a sip of a beer. What? All right. Anyway, so the plugins are in like undisputably more important than the mics and the preamp gear. Undisputably, right? If you're out there and you want to start recording your own drums, do not, I repeat, do not buy the $400 kick mic or the $500 overheads. Just get the sound. Get stuff to get the sound. Dude, the mic I'm using, check this out. This is the kick mic. I don't know if you guys can see that. That is a Samson Q kick. All right? It's the kick mic that comes with the like basic Samson drum mic package. Like you can't even buy this by itself. It's so, you know, I don't want to say the word for it. You can't even buy this by itself. It's so marginal.
Such a value.
Exactly.
Inexpensive.
Yeah. So the mics I'm using, man, I got a SM57 on the top snare. There's a Rode NT1A that's one of the overheads. I don't even know what it is. It's an Audix something or other pencil condenser on the hi-hat mic. You know, definitely the type of mics that you're using matters. You don't want to use a pencil condenser on the kick drum. You want to get a mic that's meant for a kick drum. You want to get a mic that is okay to use as an overhead, is okay to use as a top snare mic and all that. But other than that, dude, just get the sound. Spend the money on plugins. That's the second question, is Waves plugins. I have the basic Waves bundle. It's the gold bundle. And then I sort of make purchases when I see something that I want, you know. So right now, the only two plugins that I'm running is the Waves API 2500 and the Waves CLA 76, which is modeled after an 1176 for all my audio nerds out there. All right, so back to the kick drum. I'm just going into the stock Logic plugins now, nothing crazy. So I'll put a noise gate on the kick, and I have the kick isolated. All right, here we go. We're still hearing the snare a little bit, so I want to turn that threshold up until we just hear the kick hit. All right, we should be good. So the next thing I do is I just add a compressor on the kick, and this is kind of one of my secrets. I feel bad about giving this away, but it's all right. I'm gonna add a compressor on the kick, and I don't know about any other DAWs like Pro Tools or Ableton or even GarageBand, but the stock compressor in Logic actually has a filter in it. So I can filter out the highs, all the high end stuff out of the kick drum as I'm compressing it. So that's this area right here. I hope you're watching not on your phone and on a computer or something. That's this area of the compressor right here. All right. So let me isolate the kick, and I will turn down the highs on the compressed signal. All right, here we go. Woo! All right, cool. So you see the difference in the sound? Let me play you with nothing on it. The kick mic with nothing on it. Now with the noise gate and the compressor with the filter on. All right, so you see the difference. So there's a whole bunch more stuff that I do. I won't make this like a 3-hour drum break mixing masterclass with me breaking everything down, but essentially, the main thing that I really, really love to dial in is the tape machine, right? So if you guys can actually see, here, let me show you the full studio setup. This guy over here is an Akai reel-to-reel tape machine. It's a GX220D. That model number really doesn't matter. Go to a pawn shop or go to a stereo shop or even look on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace in your town or your city. Guarantee you somebody's got something for sale that resembles one of these, right? It's an Akai GX220D. So what I'm essentially doing is I'm running the entire signal out from my computer into this tape machine and then running it back into the computer. And that's a native plugin that you can do. All right. Oh, what drums and cymbals are we hearing? We are hearing Sabian cymbals. I am a proud Sabian endorser, by the way. If anybody's out there, you really, Sabian's where it's at, man. They've never followed trends. They've never like fallen off for like 5 years and then decided to sign every popular drummer all in one swoop like some other companies that rhyme with Schmilgen. And yeah, so Sabian and Ludwig drums are absolutely my favorite. Ludwig drums, if you really know your stuff, they have a stake in hip hop history. Like Ludwig drums have been some of the most famous drums ever. Like Bonham, a bunch of James Brown records, the Black Beauty itself. Snare drum is like one of the most recorded snare drums in history, right? So anyway, here we go. Let's check it out. I'm gonna add the plugin that allows me to go from my computer into the tape machine and then back into my computer, all right? So let me turn on the tape machine, make sure I have enough room on the tape. If anybody wants to know what this plugin is, it's just called IO, which stands for in out. So I'm basically have a setting in here that I've saved, goes straight to the tape. All right. So here is where the magic is going to happen, because the tape is now recording, right? And tape machines from this era, they allow you to monitor what is being recorded. Like, you're not monitoring the signal going in. You're actually hearing the tape coming out. So there's a couple seconds delay between what you send it and what actually comes out. So anyway, here we go. Yep, that's exactly what I thought was going to happen. It's too hot. Let me turn down the volume going into the tape. So, dude, already, let me show you the difference. That's without the tape. This is with the tape. So without the tape, with the tape. So honestly, if I was making drum breaks for somebody, or if I was putting out drum breaks, I might leave it there. I might do a little volume adjustment on a couple of the mics, but that's pretty much there. I can keep going if you guys want me to. Like, I can kind of show you guys a couple more pointers of just kind of what I'm thinking about sound-wise, or I can just shut the hell up and we can go to the drumming portion of the night, which it's kind of up to y'all in the chat.
Yeah, I think Brendan had a few questions to poke you about in this realm of things. You there, Brendan?
I'm all in for seeing every plugin and the sound it does, but I don't know if you have a preset patch bay of multiple ones that can show like an A/B, like difference to the raw sound and where a lot of your breaks go. I mean, because you have a multi-step process that really transforms the sound. And
so a lot of it, honestly, where I would go from here is just balancing. The two overhead mics that I have, somebody asking in the chat, what plugin is that to send? It's a Logic plugin called IO, but you have an interface that has ins and outs to actually use it. Otherwise, it's just going to be silent when you turn it on. So it's a plugin called IO in Logic. Pro Tools has one. I know Ableton probably has one. Reason maybe does. I know Machine and maybe GarageBand probably don't, but Logic, Pro Tools, and Ableton, all the big ones, they're going to have some sort of plugin that does that. All right. So, like I said, balance is the next thing that we're really going to go for. Let me. Oh shoot, my fridge is open. Hold up, let me fix that.
yeah.
Oh man, I'm sorry, I did not see that.
Don't worry about it. It's beers in there. It doesn't matter. All right, so yeah, the next thing I would probably do is just these two mics right here. Let me retitle this OH for overhead, and it's really just kind of getting these sounding less roomy, if I may. So let me isolate the overhead. There's a little too much room in it, and I really only want the high end out of that mic. So I'm going to turn it down a little bit. And if you get the Waves Gold bundle, Waves should be cutting me a check for this. If you get the Waves Gold bundle, there's a vintage EQ modeler in there that's actually modeled after the old physical EQ units in the studios. There's a vintage EQ modeler in there called VEQ. And so I pull up the VEQ4 on the overhead mic, and what I'm basically doing is just ducking off all the lows. Here's a high pass filter, meaning you're only letting the highs pass. That's why it's called high pass and low pass. So I'm putting a high pass filter on it at 270 hertz. That should take a whole bunch of the lows out of it. Let's see what it did. Yeah. Let me turn that EQ off again just so you can hear the difference. Now with it on. All right, that's nice. So I even want to take some of the mids out of it too. So I'm going to go to the low mids at 470 hertz, turn that down, and I'm going to go to the high mids at 1.5K, and I'm going to turn that down a little bit. Let's hear what it sounds like. That's nice. So now that sounds like an overhead should, not picking up the kick drum and some of the beef of the snare drum too, right? So let me go to my room mic, because I'm not feeling the way that one's coming through either, because it's very loud. So let me just turn that, honestly, almost all the way down. Yep, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take all the lows out of that room mic with the Waves VEQ4. All right. Should I be wearing like a Waves trucker hat right now as I'm like fully endorsing them? All right. So I'm going to take the highs out of that one too. The same thing I did on the overhead mic, I'm doing on the room mic. All right, and I'm gonna play with the high mids on this room mic. That's really gonna change the sound of it. Nice. Okay, so now we've got a whole lot more of the sound of the close mics, like just the kick drum mic, just the snare drum mic, just the hi-hat mic, and the crush mic that's closer. They're close mics because they're closer. Now we've got a whole lot more of the close mics actually coming through the sound because they're not being drowned out by the overhead in the room mic. That's nice. Okay, let's check the top snare mic. Okay, so here is another very, 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 very big secret of mine. The top snare mic, I gate completely. If it's a groove where I'm playing 2 and 4 with grace notes, I turn the noise gate up all the way until you only hear that 2 and 4, right? Check it out. Go into my plugins, go to noise gate, all the way down. Now, obviously, it sounds kind of cheesy like that, so you play with this release knob right here. It's just how long it takes the noise gate to close up. All right, that's pretty close. Let's check out the whole break now. Sound a little bit grimier. Let's check the crush mic. Yeah. So you were actually asking me about the crush mic.
Yeah, that was Brian was asking about the crush mic.
So the crush mic actually gets a lot of compression, like a lot. Check this out. As per usual, the Waves VEQ4. All right, Waves VEQ4. We're gonna cut a little bit of the lows off. I don't want all of them, so we're gonna cut it off at like 82 hertz right here. 82 hertz is getting cut off. Let's see what it sounds like. All right, that's good. It's already very punchy just based on the position that it's in. You know what I mean? If you put a mic here, let me go over to the drums. I'll show you. If you guys want a little tip, this guy right here, that mic, that's a huge part of the drum break sound because it's just pointed at the knee, so it gets a whole bunch of the high end out of the snare drum, and it gets like all of the actual hit of the kick drum without any. Like, that's a really important mic to have. Honestly, you can put an SM58 right there if you want to. I mean, it's when producers get a hold of your drum breaks, they're gonna mess with them anyway, and they're gonna be drowned out by somebody who recorded in the bedroom anyway. So it's not like we're working, super $1 million studio land in the first place. That's the real epiphany that I had with these drum breaks. All right, so let me put a compressor on this. Crush mic, stock compressor in Logic. Most important two knobs in any compressor are going to be your threshold and your ratio, right? This is like caveman compression 101, right? I'm not going into any physics or like, for those of you who watch, what's my man's name? What's my man's name? He's got the YouTube channel that does all the classic rock reviews. I can't think of it. Anyway, it's not going to be scientific. Threshold and ratio, the two knobs. Check it out. Watch the needle up here as I move these two knobs. So now I'm going to set the release to be a little bit quicker because I want that needle to jump back to 0 a little bit faster. So let's play the crush mic without the EQ and without the compression, okay? Crush mic isolated with nothing on it. Now with the EQ and the compression on. It's just hitting so much harder, right? So I'm probably even gonna bring the volume down a little bit of the crush mic. All right, let's hear the whole break. Now, I don't know if you guys can hear through your laptop speakers, or hopefully you're listening to this on real speakers. Do you guys hear that kind of humming coming from the ride cymbal? It's like it's up there in the woo somewhere. You kind of hear that faintly in the background?
Yeah, like it pulses in and out a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the ring of the ride cymbal jumping back out around all the kick and snare hits. So what I do is I go to the master channel, the channel that all the lights are going through. Rick Beato, that's my man's name. Yeah, Rick Beato. Huge hip hop fan, like loves it. So we're gonna go to an EQ on, and this is gonna need to be a graphic EQ. So a graphic EQ on the master channel, and we're literally gonna do what's called putting a spike on the EQ because it looks like this. It's a literal spike, right? And we're going to surf that around until we find the frequency where that ride cymbal's ringing out at. And then we're going to move this spike in the opposite direction all the way down, all right? So let's find it. So it's about right there. It's about 378 hertz. So once we found it, we keep it at 378 hertz, but we do the exact opposite. We spike it all the way down, and we probably need to widen it a little bit. Now, no more ride cymbal ring. Right? And it seems like we have one more frequency kind of ringing out around the hi-hat. Somewhere around there, right? So we're just going to do another spike. All right, so it's at 332 hertz. Spike that all the way down. There, now we don't have any weird frequencies. All right, so now that I've done all that, let me put it back through the tape, because one thing that the tape does, or any compression does, it's gonna bring out everything, right? It's not, if you have weird overtones, it's gonna bring out those and the good stuff that you played too. So compression, like you gotta take out everything that you don't want before it hits your main tape or your main compressors, right? All right, here we go. Break without the tape. Break with the tape. You ready? Oh, my bad. Gotta record. Break with the tape. Here we go. That's the floor tom ringing out. Okay, so I'm gonna turn the floor tom mic down. There it is. So if I was making drum breaks, I would honestly kind of stop there. There's a couple of little things I could do. You know, there's a free plugin I could show you guys if you want. Yeah? Anybody interested in some free plugins? Cool. I hate the bell of the hi-hat too. I actually like to leave it in there because that's actually, if you really listen, the bell hi-hat ring, a lot of those old Zildjian A's from the 70s, they all have that in there. That's kind of why I left that in there. That's good to hear though, Brian Strain. Yeah, that's good to hear. I kind of like to leave it in there though for authenticity purposes. All right. Yeah. So y'all want to hear about a free plugin?
Sure. Teddy is asking about the thump plugin on the bass drum. I'm sure he'd be interested in the free plugin too.
Luckily for you guys, they're both free. I feel like I should be wearing like a polyester tie, like a used car salesman in this clinic right now. All right. So the free plugin, I like to use both of them after the tape, because one thing about tape is it's really delicate. This kind of tape machine was actually meant for home use in the 70s. It's not the big giant tape machines that you see in the studios from the 70s. This is like one that's meant for voice recordings, or meant to people would put their vinyl records into tape because for some reason vinyl was like getting phased out at the time, or like this was like a rich person's thing to have. So these kind of machines ended up in a lot of cheaper studios because they needed something to record onto, and they didn't want to spend however much it costed to get the big tape machines. Anyway, I say all that to say you got to be careful with what you add before the tape, because if you start to overload the tape with low end, it's just going to distort in a non-pleasant way. So what I like to do is add these two free plugins after the tape. First one I'm going to add is the Metric Halo Thump. So this is a free plugin. It's by a company called Metric Halo, and it's called Thump. I think the actual name for it is MH Thump. So Metric Halo Thump. It's just a sine wave generator, which a sine wave is what all 808s are from, like in hip hop music. So a sine wave generator that you put on the kick, basically. Let me go to here we go. All right, so I'm going to go to my units and Metric Halo Thump plugin. All right, let's isolate the kick mic. Let's see what's going on. I'm going to turn the wet dry mix all the way up. So wet dry mix is at 0. That means none of it's coming through, and I'll slowly turn it up. All right, here we go. So it's a pretty huge difference. The only thing you got to be careful with is when you're adding this plugin on a kick mic, you got to gate the kick mic completely off, because if you don't, everything that comes through the mic is going to echo with that low end. Let me play it without the noise gate on. You're just going to hear low end going crazy. See, it's still kind of generating that low end when it hears the snare coming through. So you got to gate it off completely. All right. Now you can sort of play with the frequencies over here. I like to move it down over here to 40 hertz, because 40 hertz is, in my opinion, is where God lives. It's just, you cannot beat it. And you need a subwoofer to really hear it. So I don't know if y'all have subwoofers, but that sounds like heaven over here to me. So
Big and cushy.
So I like to keep the wet dry mix pretty in favor of the dry signal. Because if I turn this mix all the way up at 100%, it's just going to be way too much. Like that's, by the time you go and mix everything and compress everything, it's going to be way too much. So take it down to like 30%, 20 something. All right, now let me play the full break through the tape with and without the Metric Halo Thump on the kick. Ready? Here we go. Sorry. Without. All right, here's the Metric Halo Thump on. The mix up a little bit. If you have speakers or headphones that generate some low end, it's disgusting, right?
Oh yeah.
This is a free plugin. It's a free plugin. And anyone out there thinking like, oh, this is insanely complicated, I'm not about to start making my own sample packs. If you make Instagram drumming videos, use this stuff, man. You know, I'm not saying go out there and try to be me and make all these drum break sample packs and get on hip hop records. I'm saying even if you make videos where you played drums on Instagram sometimes, fam, like these techniques will at the very least make somebody who's never seen your video spend about 3 more seconds going like, oh wow, before they decide whether or not they want to go to the next video. You know what I'm saying? So it's all relevant.
That's huge, man. It's really, that's great advice too. And this is, I just want to remind everybody that we are recording tonight, so we're gonna put this up on YouTube. You can, you know, come back to it if you didn't take enough notes tonight. Come back, check it out. Take one skill at a time. You know, figure it out.
And I've actually got a YouTube video too. Yeah, I've actually got a YouTube video, a YouTube channel where I do a video just like this, mixing a drum break completely from scratch with nothing but stock Logic plugins, thus plugins that you can find in any other, you know, in GarageBand or Pro Tools or Ableton. Only using stock plugins and free plugins that I put a link to at the bottom of the YouTube video. So check out my YouTube channel. Just go on YouTube, type AJ Hall. I've got a bunch of drum break content up there and a video that's doing exactly this, obviously without taking questions live in a chat. You know. So the second plugin, something I like to add after the tape, and it's arguably one of my favorite plugins like ever, man. This is by a website called Bedroom Producers Blog, and they are essentially like a news site for free audio production stuff, right? Not always free. They do newsletters on discounts and what companies offering this. You know, Waves has buy one get one free, and then you click the link and then you go over there, or like this company's offering this plugin for 1 month, you know. Anyway, so they put out their own plugin. It's called Dirty Filter. This thing is absolutely insane, man. So I go in to my audio units, Bedroom Producers Blog right there, Dirty Filter, all right? So the Dirty Filter is essentially just a filter plugin with a mix knob, that's how much signal you're hearing, and a volume knob at the end, and then it has a high pass and a low pass filter, but the real key is the drive knob up here. So it's an overdrive that goes from 0 to 100. So I really like to use it to tame the tape hiss and really give the entire drum break a different quality, right? So check this out. This is insane. Here we go. So I'm just gonna move this low pass filter knob and play with this overdrive a little bit. And I'm gonna keep the mix at 60 something percent, which means we're getting 60% of the filtered signal and 40% of the original signal. So we're hearing both at the same time, all right? Check this out. So you hear how it just instantly took on a characteristic like it was from a different record or something like that, right? It's like you run that Bedroom Producers Blog Dirty Filter at the end of your signal chain, and you've really changed the entire shape of just, you've changed the entire EQ spectrum, the way that it catches somebody's ear. Like you've shifted all of that just by moving a couple of knobs. We'll play the plugin without it. Then we play the plugin on. And of course, you can play with a couple of knobs in here. Let me just mess around and show you the sounds. So yeah, you can really change the entire sound of the drum break with just that one plugin, you know. That's one of my favorites ever. So Metric Halo Thump, Bedroom Producers Blog Dirty Filter are like the two free tools in your arsenal for making your drums sound better.
Thank you
Nice.
for the
Nice.
free, the free plug-in tip is huge, and everybody's saying thank you for your generosity with this information. It's really like a lot of that gold that you look for, that you rarely come across, and everybody, loves it.
Power to drummers in this new normal, man, because this is part of what I was saying way earlier with hip hop changing from moving away from sampling records that are already put out in the 70s and stuff. It's getting harder and harder to do that for hip hop producers, because if you land a major label placement, it's harder and harder to clear samples. It's not like the 90s where you can just grab a Bob James or a Herbie Hancock record and it's, it's like the wild, wild west. It's not like that anymore. You got to pay for it. So more and more hip hop producers are looking to musicians that make their own sample packs. So if anybody's out there and you play something else, if you play keys or piano or guitar, or you play 2 different horns, make some sample packs, man. You'd be surprised. You'd definitely be surprised. But you got to pay attention to like what's going on culturally in hip hop. I see cats put out drum break sample packs all the time, and it sounds like nothing that anybody wants to rap over ever. So there's that part of it. You got to pay attention to like what's actually happening in the music. I'm not going to put out a odd meter prog rock instructional video because I don't know anything about that. You know what I mean? So yeah, the other part of it is you got to really know what's going on culturally. That takes time. So I mean, we're kind of at the crossroads again. I could keep going, or we could just go to the actual drumming part.
Yeah, I want to throw a couple questions up just for people who are like looking to get into this and basically like have no knowledge of it yet. First of all, we've mentioned DAW a lot, and there may be some people out there that still don't know what that means. So I just wanted to like.
DAW stands for Digital Audio Workstation. So that's, if you have a MacBook, you have one. If you have a MacBook, you have GarageBand. You can pay a little bit extra. It's like $200, and you get Logic Pro, which is, in my opinion, better than Pro Tools, but it's comparable to Pro Tools. So you'll be able to get everything you need to get done in there.
Yeah, and a segue off of that, I wanted to ask, you using Logic for this, do you have is this your preference out of them all? Have you tried them, or is this just something like you already knew this and you went with it?
Yeah, I definitely like to use Logic because I came, like everybody else, I came from GarageBand, and then when you get Logic, you can actually open GarageBand files in Logic, so that's a handy thing to have. If you've been working on demos and you in GarageBand and you want to get serious, you can buy Logic and then you can continue your GarageBand stuff. I don't know, I just like it better. I think Pro Tools is like with great power comes great responsibility. I think Pro Tools just has everybody's brains messed up to think that, you can play God in that program, man. You can just, it's like, oh, what? The drummer's not playing in time or playing with any pocket at all. We can fix that. Blah, blah, blah. Like it gives you way too much power than you need to make music that just resonates with people. You know what I mean? And I feel like a lot of people spend a lot of their time learning everything that Pro Tools does. And you ask some famous musicians, like famous rock musicians, Pro Tools ruined a lot of records, man.
Yeah. Interesting, yeah.
AJ, I think we have some people that are eager for you to do some playing, but I think one last question on this sampling and looping thing is from our friend Joe Baldacci. Joe, would you want to ask him the question yourself?
Thoughts on I'm reading it. Thoughts on
you see it there.
Samples on a subscription-based platform versus selling them like a personal site or via Bandcamp. The Patreon thing. Okay, so the Patreon thing, it's got to be a lot of volume, and you gotta figure out who your audience is first. I sell to a lot of hip hop producers. My secondary audience is like indie singer-songwriters that just need some drums to write a song to by themselves. You got to know your audience first before you do that. I've found with other people that I haven't done Patreon myself, but I've found with other people that do Patreon, it's not hard to keep people there. It's hard to get them there, because we live in the get a subscription and forget about it society. You know, everybody in this chat, I'm sure, has 15 subscriptions that they forgot they have that just come out every month, and we're like, oh, I guess, I don't know, I got gas one day when they look at their bank statement, you know. So the subscription based thing, yeah, it's a yes and no. It's a yes and no. I think there's much more damage that you can do on a website by yourself, but that's not to say that the Patreon thing isn't the move, because who knows, you might see me doing that in like a year or so. So yeah.
And I'll just use this opportunity before we get you out to play. I'm just going to show everybody, we've been putting the link in the chat, but it's just his website's really cool, and it looks like you're just getting a lot of stuff kind of on board there. But it's a fun place to just look at all the breaks that he has available. As he puts them up, and highly recommend you going through his website just to kind of see what he's up to, because I think it's unique how AJ is choosing to present himself as an artist right now, and there's very intentional decisions being made about how he is marketing. So I think it's pretty cool. And then obviously you can get his awesome sample packs here as well.
Where all the info is too. I'm on Instagram at AJ Hall 89. That's AJ Hall 89. That's where I do these daily breakdowns, like you were mentioning before. That's where I do these daily breakdowns of, you know, how I make the drum breaks and how I'm mixing them. And you know, people hit me up on a case-by-case basis. People hit me up to make 10 drum breaks, sometimes 20, sometimes 30, sometimes 50 at a time for them, and I make them and they go to them and only them, you know. So I kind of show the process of mixing them, and drummers seem to enjoy watching it, and for whatever reason, hip-hop producers seem to like watching it, even though a lot of hip-hop producers don't play drums, nor do they have the capability to even record drums. I guess people just like seeing what's under the hood, man, and you know. So that's where all the info is, and maybe in the future there'll be some actual more playing videos of me on my Instagram, but for now, there's not that many opportunities to make playing on a gig content right now, you know.
Sure. Well, would you be willing to share some of your perspectives and playing? I know a lot of people, but I was talking around to people about this event, people are definitely interested in your New Orleans groove approach, and anything you want to do over on the kit, we're down for.
Let's get into it.
Hold on. Cool. While we're having AJ move over to kit, I just want to remind everyone that if you're enjoying the event and you like what we do, consider dropping us a small donation. Everything we do is funded by you guys. I'm putting the link in the chat again.
Don't consider it, just do it. Don't think, just act. Do it. All right, here we go.
All right, thanks everyone.
What's that? What's that thing in The Office where Dwight is like doing the countdown to make a decision? 1, 5, 4, 3, 2. All right, here we go.
If you're not spending your stimulus money, it's just money.
See? Free yourself of your money. Rid yourself of it. You know? You don't need it. Money! All right. So we had some questions. But yeah, right. We had some questions about New Orleans playing. Was that kind of what we should go over first?
Yeah. Well, if you have a basic philosophy or approach, otherwise, I mean, I've got lots of questions.
Okay. So the first thing that I'll say is that New Orleans drumming in general, to me, has never just meant. It's never just meant like second line style playing, you know. That's kind of a dated thing. It's not dated. It's just that's like saying the cars stopped at the Model T. You know, it's like it became a thing as New Orleans progressed and as music progressed, honestly. So New Orleans drumming is a giant umbrella that a lot of different styles kind of exist under. So just basic pocket 2 and 4. If I'm playing a 2 and 4 groove that's informed by pocket, it's going to be a lot different than if I wasn't being informed by New Orleans, right? And not playing informed by New Orleans is something that's kind of hard for me to do, frankly. So, yeah, let me show you a little something. Oh, now I'm getting latency. Hold on. Let me turn my. Let me see my screen. Yeah, I'm getting a little bit of latency. Let me see. All right, we should be better now. Yeah, nice. So if I'm playing a New Orleans style pocket, just in 2 and 4, I'll play you straight, and then I'll play you informed by New Orleans. All right, here we go. All right, so that's just your basic 16th note thing, right? Now, the secret, for me, the secret of infusing a little bit of New Orleans into that is, one, lies in the 16th notes, in your division of the 16th notes, instead of, you actually give it that lilt that's in between swung and straight. And so instead of, you actually go. It's not quite swung, but it's not quite straight. And the second thing that really, starts to become more informed by New Orleans is your phrasing, right? There's a lot of New Orleans drumming that comes from playing over the bar line. So instead of going like this, instead of doing that where we're just bang, 2, 3, 4, like top of the phrase and bang. Instead of doing like that, you kind of play with, you play 4 bars and you kind of play with where the resolution happens, as long as it happens past the next bar line, all right? I'll give you an example. So you see how a lot of that didn't involve a big build-up and go, 1, 2, There's a lot of sort of playing with the bar line and where you actually resolve the phrase, right? So that's kind of my philosophy on infusing it into just regular pocket playing, right? So, yeah.
I love that the way you're explaining that, just like go over the bar line with, like, you're talking specifically about like kind of fill ideas or variations.
Right.
That's a really helpful way to think about it.
Right. And it honestly comes from, I'm sure Jon Cleary could talk to you more about this, but it honestly comes from Cuba, a lot of Spanish music, because you hear in a lot of salsa music, the big phrase starts, and then the rest of the percussion kind of starts to form at least a bar later, right? You ever hear that in salsa music where they go 1, 2, 3? Like, where I actually started that fill was at the beginning of the next phrase. It wasn't before the next phrase started. You know what I'm saying? So I think a lot of that comes from Cuban music, and it kind of developed into a second line thing, because a lot of second line drummers do that too. You see bass drum and snare drum separately, two guys playing, one guy playing snare drum, one guy playing bass drum. You see that happen where at the beginning of a phrase, then the fill starts, instead of what we as conventional drummers think of. We like play 2 bars of a fill and then back to normal and beat 1 at the next phrase.
Yeah. Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, a lot of like Afrobeat has that too.
Exactly. So and New Orleans predates the United States. A lot of people don't know that. It was around it was around and it was a city before the United States was a thing. So it's older than the country is itself. So it's got a lot more influence from the rest of the world than the rest of the country does,
Right. So I have two questions. First of all, like I'm curious about your open hand style playing.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, like New Orleans drummers that have influenced you, or non-New Orleans drummers even that have influenced you on this subject.
Yeah. So I mean, the open-handed thing, I'll just say flat out, the open-handed thing was an accident. Honestly, I started out playing before I had any lessons, and I was playing drums for a while before I took any lessons, before anybody told me to do anything. I just started doing that. I didn't look at any instructional videos. I'm not one of those kids that was watching Dennis Chambers videos when I was like 9 years old. I just kind of started playing drums, and I'm like, okay, hand, and then hand and foot. Okay, cool. Like, it just happened that way. And by the time I started really honing my craft and taking lessons, it was just too late, frankly.
Well, I think like I'm so fascinated. I'm a right-handed player, and I try to practice open-handed just because it feels like a thing that maybe I should do at this stage. But I look at drummers like Robert Sput Seawright. Like someone like him. It's like, and even like you, like your phrasing, because you're playing on a righty kit, but you're playing with open-handed, and you end up with different ideas sheerly because one hand tends to start an idea more than another, or it moves in this part of the drum kit and naturally flows that way or the other. And I think that's like really,
it's a sound thing too, honestly. Like, playing crossover like this, like most right-handed guys do, you can hit the snare drum as hard as you possibly can, but you still got to do this. This guy's still got to get out of the way of this. You know what I mean? Like, guys that really, really hit, you're still crossed over, so you still got to go, huh. You know what I mean? Me, I have nothing blocking me here, so I can play super quiet on the hi-hats, and I can hit the hell out of the snare drum, You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing in the way. And that means that I also don't have to, by default, do an accent whenever I'm hitting the snare drum. A lot of guys, because they have to just move their hand up, right? Me, so I can keep it rather constant without having to do an accent unless I want to,
And is French grip something you just landed on as well, or?
I landed on. I'm 100% in favor of figure it out first and then take lessons. I'm 100% in favor of that. Figure it out first. Figure out what you want to sound like. Figure out what's comfortable to you. Then take lessons and dial it in. I'm so in favor of that. It's not even funny. Like the other way of starting out completely when you know nothing about the drums, dude, just sit at a kit for like a year and then take some lessons. That's where I'm at on that. So French grip, yeah. And honestly, people, when I play straight ahead, people ask me about the straight ahead thing all the time because I just sort of naturally developed a little bit of the Tony thing. I just sort of naturally developed that over time. Nobody taught me how to do it, and it just came from playing on gigs and like, oh shit, we have to play fast now. I got to figure this out. It came from that. Then I got with my instructor in college, and we started to really talk about his philosophy on it. But it came from just, my hand naturally wants to go here. My hand doesn't want to do this. My hand doesn't want to go German like that. That feels weird. This feels perfect. Because here, I have to move my wrist, right? And here, I'm literally just using my fingers. I could sit here and without using my wrist at all,
I'm just drooling over it because it's such a beautifully developed left-hand French grip, which for me, it's like that's the lifetime pursuit on French grip is, as a righty, my left just looks like trash compared to my right all the time. So Are there any like exercises that you use to develop that further, or?
Honestly, man, it's and I mean I know this is like the age old thing that you get. I've seen clinics with Dennis Chambers, and they're asking him like, "How did you with the groupings of fives?" And he's like, "Man," and Dennis will go like, "Man, just play the shit." I know it's such a cliche when you get like established cats trying to break down what actually happens, but it really is that way, man. There was a time where I couldn't play anything, and then I just kept wanting to do it, and then it just happened. I just willed it into existence by sitting at the kit and trying to do it and not being able to do it for a while. Anything able to do, dude. If y'all can see my foot down here, I just developed this heel up thing, like not playing like this, like a year ago.
So what made you want to do it? Because a lot of people, it's the opposite. They start burying the beater, and tone is like stopped there, and then you learn about jazz, and you got to open it up, put the heel down.
Tone thing I kind of use both ways, because there's a way that you can not bury the beater and still play heel up. You can go like that. If you pull back a little bit, I hope y'all are watching the foot. You can pull back a little bit and not bury the beater. I'm talking about my heel up, right?
Yeah.
Develop that for years and years and years. I was playing like this, and it makes it harder to play funky, makes it harder to play grace notes. Like I'll try to play flat-footed. Check it out. Like you're feeling the kick not coming. So I just once again, out of necessity, I wanted to play funkier bass drum patterns, so I spent a couple months just forcing my heel to go up, and then I eventually you know what I mean?
Yeah, so it
came out of necessity. I didn't watch any videos. I didn't, like have 7 lessons with Dave Elitch. Like, how do I get my foot to do, and that's not a diss to Dave Elitch either. I've had a lesson with him. He's amazing. But I'm saying it should start with you wanting to do something and really trying to figure that out for yourself. And then you eventually submit and go like, all right, I kind of need some help with this,
Yeah, it sounds like you're trying to get those like Jay Dilla kind of style non-quantized relationships, which are mostly kind of like flams, but like you said, right? Grace notes.
That Chris Dave double is drew me to it, because you can't do one of it's like Chris Dave is literally forcing those out, like. You know what I mean? Like you can't play that flat-footed at all. You cannot. So yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit more about that, since I think that's a big part of your vocabulary as a hip hop break producer? Yeah.
It comes from, and I actually briefly talked about this the other day. It comes from, fam, I'm such a fan of like old 70s funk. It's not even funny. That's what I was raised around, right? I didn't start getting into straight ahead stuff until college, and I had heard none of it. Going into college, I had heard none of it. That's a separate story. But I grew up listening to Average White Band, Tower of Power, old P-Funk records, some old prog stuff, like the old Yes records and, Emerson, Lake and Palmer and stuff like that. But it came from my knowledge of that style of drumming. Like you listen to Steve Ferroni on those Average White Band records. I hope everybody in the chat knows Love Your Life by Average White Band. Everybody know that song? Any of the moderators know it?
I'm embarrassed to say I'm not hearing it in my head. Want me to put it on?
I'm not either, yeah.
Hold on. Don't put it on yet. Have you heard Check the Rhyme by Tribe Called Quest?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's where that sample is from, right? So Steve Ferroni on there is dude, it's so meat and potatoes, it's not even funny. Check this out. I mean, like basic, not even grace notes. He's not even doing. Like none of that. He's just meat and potatoes, but it feels so. So it comes from knowing, like really knowing records like that and knowing the drumming language, like not playing that much and just focusing on getting like a sound out of each drum that is really strong and profound, you know? It comes from that. And then later on, listening to a bunch of hip hop and really falling in love with hip hop music and learning about how those records were sampled and then thus rapped over, right? So me as a breakbeat drummer comes from being obsessed with funk in my early, like 12 to teenage years, and then being obsessed with hip hop when I was like 19, up until now in perpetuity, you know. So it comes from knowing the music that the samples come from, and then understanding what those samples mean to the new generation of hip hop producers and rappers, right? Yeah.
Awesome. Oh yeah, going
into the New Orleans thing if you want, but I don't know if we're past that or whatever.
Well, I was gonna say, actually, I don't think we talked about like what New Orleans drummers or people that have made New Orleans feels that you look up to and who you've channeled, or yeah.
Eddie Christmas is probably my biggest New Orleans influence. He was one of the Jon Cleary drummers before me. He's on that live album, the Jon Cleary live album. It's the only live album he's put out. His playing like sent me for a complete. It was like taking LSD, fam. It was like when I first heard Eddie's playing, I was like, yo, what is happening right? Because he has this thing that I kind of get into sometimes where he's playing a groove, but there's an ugliness to it, you know? It's not. Like it's this. Like there's a subtlety to his playing, but there's a meanness to it almost. There's an authority to it while still being subtle. You know, it's not Kenny Aronoff authority. It's like there's an authority to it, but there's a slickness about his playing too that I had never really heard in anybody else's playing up until then. So Eddie is a huge influence of mine, and beyond that, I mean, honestly, it's just those old New Orleans records, man. Earl Palmer, who played with Fats Domino, who played, you know, on a lot of the old Earl Palmer records. Him and the old records of Zigaboo, man. Zigaboo's phrasing and just his time, his sense of space, you know. It's just the way he.
It sounds like you got your the buzz strokes that you were playing kind of from his tight snare sound.
Yeah. And, you know, the buzz thing, once again, comes from being informed by New Orleans, by real second line drumming. Like, it comes from that.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Some of that Vernal Fournier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, funk drummers from New Orleans is a whole separate conversation from straight ahead drummers from New Orleans, because Vernell is a huge influence of mine, and Jason Marsalis is actually another huge influence of mine, because coming up playing straight ahead and playing swing, or jazz as they call it now, I was really informed by Jason's playing, because the way Jason plays is like, Jason's the most deliberate drummer I've ever heard. And what I mean deliberate is there is zero accidental stuff in his playing. He's one of the cats that if you ask, like, what were you thinking about on that solo or like that one section of the tune, he's one of the only cats who will be like, this is exactly what I was thinking on that. Like, he's completely methodical with everything he plays, right? So it's so hip when he plays straight ahead, because instead of the basic, you know, instead of all that chatter, like, he'll be so deliberate which is a lineage of like part of the lineage of coming from Brunel Fournier. He'll be so deliberate when he plays swing. It's just. So intentional with his playing, you know. So Jason is quietly like that dude for me in straight ahead playing. Yeah.
Living in the quarter note on the ride cymbal, just driving that feel.
And a lot of it comes from a non-New Orleans drummer named Frankie Dunlop. Frankie Dunlop was one of the members of the Thelonious Monk Quartet, and one of the members of one of the Thelonious Monk quartets. Thelonious had a couple of different quartets, but Frankie would play that exact same way too, just stupidly deliberate, almost like humorously deliberate, but to the point where you're just like, man, I don't know what is happening right now, but it's killing, you know.
We got a question here from Brian. Brian, do you want to unmute and ask yourself?
Sure. AJ, all this is awesome, man. I'm geeking out over all this stuff. How did you get the Cleary gig? You know, I love that Mo Hippa live album. That's how I got into Cleary. You know, one of my buddies, Gooston, was like, dude, you got to check this out. This is like where it's at. And then I had the fortune to come see you play at Ardmore with Cleary, and, you know, blew me away. It was one of the best shows I've seen in a while. So just as knowledgeable as Jon Cleary is, like, he knows probably more about music than, you know, most people on the planet. Just being able to hang with him and play with him, like, how did you get the gig, and then what's some of the best advice, knowledge that he's dropped on you?
Yeah. So first of all, Ardmore Music Hall is one of my favorite places to play ever. Can anybody in the chat or one of the moderators verify for me that pizza place across the street is still open?
It is. I live right around the corner. Next time you're here, we're gonna have a beer, man.
I go to that place and I just black out. Like, I don't know what happens. Every time I've played at the Ardmore maybe 8-9 times. Every single time, somehow before the show, I get 2 slices and a cheesesteak, and I make it through the rest of the night. I don't know what happens. There's some like laws of physics being defied in that building. I don't know what, dude. Whew. All right. Anyway, so the way that I got the Cleary gig, so when I was in high school, this was 2004, 2005. No, probably 2006. Yes, probably 2006, 2007, somewhere in there. Jon Cleary's band came and played a festival that we have here in Tampa, because I was living in Tampa with, you know, in my parents. I was living in Tampa at the time. He came down here and played a festival that we have called the Clearwater Jazz Holiday, right? And it's a big festival. They get big acts every year. They've gone way corporate now. Like, they had the last time they had the festival, I think they had Postmodern Jukebox close out the show. Like, they've gone super corporate with their like YouTube star bands. But back in the day, it was just who was dope on the scene. They would headline the festival, right? So me and my parents used to go all the time, and we saw Jon Cleary play with his band. It was the same band. It was Cornell. I don't know if it was Jelly Bean. It might have been somebody else, but it was Cornell, you know, Big D, and Cleary. And I was obviously like completely blown away. I was maybe 16, 17, something like that. And I had been a fan of his ever since. From that point on, I was buying the records when they came out in real time, you know? So he was just a cat that I listened to for a long time, all the way up in high school, all the way up through college at Florida State in Tallahassee. So I moved to New Orleans, and I moved to New Orleans from Florida in 2012, right? So, and I just left New Orleans in 2020 in March, which is a whole nother story. But I was in New Orleans from 2012 to 2020, right? And the whole time I'm there, from about 2012 to 2016, I'm, I'm playing gigs. I'm making my little rounds. I got stuff going on. I maybe have my own band a little bit sometimes. Playing gigs with some cats in town. My homie from Florida State, who I met at Florida State, his name is Jameson Ross. I don't know if anybody in the chat or anybody in the moderators know Jameson Ross. Jameson Ross has toured with Snarky Puppy, Carmen Lundy, like played with Chick Corea. Like he's a bad dude, ridiculously bad. He was living in New Orleans at the same time too, and we were friends. We were hanging out, meeting on the same gig, talking, doing what you do in New Orleans. And eventually, Jameson started playing with Jon Cleary, and I started going to the gigs that Jameson was playing with him because I'm like, oh man, my homie's playing with like one of my favorite artists ever. This is so dope. So I go, I'm checking out the gig. I'm just hanging out. Mind you, all the while I'm listening to Cleary's records in rotation, not just like, oh, that's cool, check mark next to that. I'm listening to Cleary's records, like learning stuff about the real records, who played on what, the actual song structures, all of that, So it comes time that Jameson's career starts really taking off. Jameson is a solo artist. He sings with like an actual headset mic from behind the drums, and he's killing. So it comes a time where Jameson's solo career is starting to interfere with his ability to tour with other artists named like Jon Cleary. So Jameson kind of knows that I'm a Cleary head heavy, right? So eventually Jameson tells Cleary, like, yo, it's getting kind of hard for me to make all these tours and these gigs. Like, you might want to start finding somebody else. And was like, all right, well, who would you recommend? And he recommended me. So that's not how I got the gig. The recommendation wasn't how I got the gig. The recommendation was only the vehicle for how I got the gig. How I got the gig was one night out of the blue. This is when Cleary was holding down a Monday night residency at the Maple Leaf Bar in New Orleans. Maple Leaf is like the scuzziest, most old school, incredible dive bar in New Orleans ever, right? It's old, been around since the 60s, 70s, probably even before that. Cleary had a regular Monday night residency at the Maple Leaf with the Absolute Monster Gentleman. So one night, Jameson last minute can't make the gig, and this is already when Cleary's trying to maybe find somebody else because Jameson's schedule is getting crazy. So out of the blue, Cleary texted me. He's like, "Hey man, you wanna come by the Maple Leaf and play tonight? Because we're kind of out of luck." And Jameson said, "You're a fan of my music." So how I got the gig was showing up on that gig and zero difference in the amount of stuff that Jameson had rehearsed with them, or the amount of songs that Jameson was playing with them, even the amount of songs that Cleary pulled out of his hat that night that Jameson hadn't been playing with them for a while. Because I have been listening to this dude's entire catalog for a long time, right?
Sing backgrounds too that night?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh man.
Going to the gigs. And people, a lot of people in New Orleans think that I was like plotting on the gig for years and years and years. Like it was totally not that. I was fine doing whatever. I was happy with, I had a touring gig with this band called Bonerama at the time, and we had played the Ardmore a couple times too. So,
that band's great too.
Yeah, such a great band. I didn't realize you were their drummer.
Yeah, I didn't either. I love that stuff. All the Zeppelin covers with.
That's me singing on the Zeppelin record.
What?
No way. That's awesome.
Singing Black Dog and all the other stuff. We actually recorded that right before I left Bonerama to join Cleary's band full time. Like that's me playing drums and singing. I'm playing drums on the whole record, but I'm singing on the Led Zeppelin stuff. So yeah, what actually got me the gig was being over prepared for that night when it did come up. So, and that wasn't because I wasn't learning Cleary's songs and really listening to him because I'm like, oh, one day I'm going to get the gig. He's going to call me and I'm going to do perfectly on the gig. And he's going to be so, I was just listening to his stuff because I was genuinely a fan, and that's what actually got me the gig, is showing up and playing the gig, not only knowing the music, but really, really enjoying playing the music. And that came through my playing that night, So the whole time I'm playing, they're looking back at me like, were you at rehearsal? Like, did I miss something? Because I knew all the songs, all the hits, like most of the background vocals at the time. Like I was ready for the gig regardless. And that's a testament to being ready for the gig, but it's also, I'm not saying that you should like plot on somebody else's gig for like 4 years and then try to, it just happened that way because I actually like Cleary's music, So yeah.
Nice. Got a couple more questions, and I guess we'll wrap up for tonight after that. If you want to hang out, if anyone wants to hang out afterwards, we usually just like chill in the Zoom for a little while and just chat, because that's how we usually do these events in person.
I'm finishing up the Modelo, but I'll probably get into the hard stuff after we finish talking about drums.
Nice. All right, cool. Got a couple of random questions here. One of them, I feel like this is something that doesn't get talked about a whole lot, and I think a lot of people have been feeling it, especially over the last year, is just how creatives deal with burnout when it does happen, because a lot of us do run into it eventually in our careers or wherever we are.
Let me go to the other camera for this. Hold on.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. My people, burnout as a creative. If the cat who asked that doesn't mind sharing what they're involved in, like are you a drummer? Are you I'm assuming if you're here, you're a drummer, but so let's get specific. This is Gary V time. Let's go.
Yeah, the question's for me, so I'm just hypothetical questions. Like, I'm sure everyone deals with this. I just figured it's a topic doesn't get covered enough.
Burnout. Okay, so yeah, all right. This is like what's that show? Anybody who has a girlfriend or a wife, you know the show I'm talking about. The show that's on E. The show that's on the E network where they have the show with all the chicks that kind of hate each other and they're rich and they argue and stuff, and then they have the after show where the one dude in the suit is like on the couch with them, like, oh, and you remember when you said that, when like they get all messy. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so this is that time. Let's get real. So I moved from New Orleans. My wife, me, and our 3-year-old daughter at the time. I had been planning to move from New Orleans since October of 2019. That's when I decided to, right? And I told Cleary, I said, look, I'm gonna be in Florida. I gotta go near my family. I gotta bounce. I can't do it anymore, right? But let me know where to be. Let's keep playing. And he was like, cool. I'll let you know when you need to come back to New Orleans. You have the tour schedule. It's fine. So all of that was set in motion. And then February/March of 2020 hit, and we all know what happened, right? So March, we were supposed to sell our house, and the sale fell through because the person who was going to buy the house got furloughed at their job, right? So all of a sudden, we're going to sell our house and move to Florida. Oh, wait, now we're not going to be able to sell our house. Those of you who have sold or bought a house, you know the scarlet letter that comes from a deal falling through. Then it's harder to sell your house for the same price if the deal falls through, right? So fast forward, we say we got to bounce, right? There's a global pandemic happening. We got to go to Florida anyway. We stayed with my in-laws, with my wife's parents, from March until about July of 2020. I want to say July. Yeah, just about. From March until July of 2020. That's a long time. Those of you who've stayed with your in-laws, that's a long time. Now imagine doing that with a 3-year-old girl, and also having lost your main source of income, and also not knowing where you're going to live, straight up, because who's house hunting in the middle of a pandemic, right? So that, and I'm not afraid to say this, that was absolute rock bottom for me. I'm not saying the entire time was miserable for 4 months. I'm just saying that there were moments where it was like, man, what do I need to take some classes and figure out how to be an electrician or something? Because this shit is over, Like I was down for the count, right? So the one thing that I'm thankful for in that time was the one thing that I'm thankful for is the fact that was absolute rock bottom. Because when you come out of that, boy, you hit the gas. Like when you come out of that and you're alive, excuse my language, but what the fuck else is anybody gonna do to me? So I came out of that time, such a dark place in my life, living every day and every creative moment as for the gift that it was, because we ended up landing in this house that I'm in right now. This is like, for those of you who don't know, this studio is the fourth bedroom in the house, and it's at the front of the house. The previous owners renovated the garage with full AC, and it's insulated, so it's brick on top of drywall. It's a really thick fortified studio. Like, we ended up, from a really scary situation, we landed on our feet, so having come out of that really dark place like not that long ago, like, burnout was a very, very real thing for me back then. Like, I say back then, like it's a couple of years ago. It was last March. It was less than a year ago, So burnout for creatives, especially in the pandemic, you just have to, you got to zoom out, And what I mean by zoom out is, like, you got to think long term and you got to think big picture, If I make a 10 batch of drum breaks, right? If I make a batch of 10 drum breaks, and the client that I make them for doesn't like it, that's a crossroads. I could either say, man, what am I doing? Like, this, they don't even like the shit that I'm putting out. Like, let me just hang it up. Or I can send that guy a message and I can say, hey man, I hear you. You're not really feeling that drum break pack that I just sent to you. What can I do differently? How can we make this right? It's a crossroads moment. You gotta look at every moment as like, okay, shit, pile it on. What's next? Let's keep going. The burnout thing only comes from the burnout thing, in my opinion, comes from not zooming out. You gotta look at big picture. This COVID thing isn't gonna last forever. It's definitely changed the game a lot, but it's not gonna last forever. Yeah, you just gotta keep moving. Obviously, watching like motivational speaker videos and stuff helps, but that's not gonna change how you feel. It's only gonna give you a different perspective. You gotta look within and just lift up.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think it's always great just to hear everyone's different perspectives on this, because it affects everyone differently, and just it helps to hear different people's experiences with it and just how they get through it.
And I mean, man, there's days where I have to make a batch of like 30 drum breaks for somebody, and I'm sitting here running back and forth like you see me doing all day from like 8 in the morning until 5 p.m. There's days when I'm doing that, and at the end of the day, I'm just like, man, this is awful. But then I zoom out, and that little voice in the back of my head that was there with me during that rock bottom period says, man, somebody just paid you to do what you love. Like, what do you sack up, man? What are you doing?
Yeah.
In the back of my head, it's like, man, zoom out, just big picture, long term. Long term is hard to see what incremental advances happening, but it's the only way to really keep momentum. It's just long term.
Yeah.
Well, you become our inspirational speaker. Sorry, I was just gonna say, man. Like, this is you're our motivational speaker tonight. It's awesome hearing this.
I thank that dark period in my life, man, because I keep saying it like it's so far away. It was less than a year ago. I thank the fact that I went through that, though, because when you come out of that, your whole perspective, everything gets way more important, like everything gets way more important.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Got one more question, and then I'm going to throw it back over to Kirk, and we can wrap this up. So the last one is a little more on a positive note here. Just want to hear like a song or an album, like what's been getting you going these days? Like, what have you discovered in the last year or so that's really been helping you out? And throw this to the chat too, if anyone wants to chime in with stuff that they've been digging.
Let's blow up the chat too, because I'm reading it. Y'all can type whatever you want, because I see it on my monitor too. Okay, so music that I've really been digging lately. If there's any hip hop fans out there, you know about the Griselda movement by now, or at least you should. Griselda is 3 guys out of Buffalo, New York, that single-handedly, not single-handedly, but they're 3 guys out of Buffalo, New York that are the leading players in this like boom bap revival right now. So anybody out there who enjoys, Enter the 36 Chambers or any of that early Wu-Tang stuff, or any just the early 90s grimy hip hop, right? Anybody who really enjoys that, the Griselda movement, the 3 rappers in that movement are really the front runners of bringing that sound back, both with rapping and with the producers that they use, right? So that's been really that's honestly been really what I've been listening to more than music that's played with instruments, really. Anybody else got
Nice.
Griselda? Yeah, somebody said Griselda. That's right. Yeah. If you like the Ghostface Killer stuff, the only built for Cuban links, like Griselda is the one. Yeah. Other than that, honestly, man, there is. Ooh. I'm really into the classic. I'm really just into classic black music, man. Like the soul from the 70s and even a lot of it from the 80s is just really what I'm into. Like, Barry White, a lot of Earth, Wind and Fire, a lot of Marvin post Motown, a lot of Tamla Records. Is Marvin is really my jam, man. But as far as recommended listening, there's an album by DJ Shadow. It's called Introducing, like introducing, but with end at the front, right? Introducing. And it was made in 1996. It's the first album. It's the first major record release album constructed entirely of samples, right? There's no like post-recorded vocals on it. All the vocals you hear are from samples. All the drums you hear from samples. All the keyboards and everything. It's all samples. But it is as much of a journey as Dark Side of the Moon is. Like I swear to God, it's the hip-hop Dark Side of the Moon. Introducing by DJ Shadow. That record is amazing, man. That's one that I can never. That's a Desert Island like top 5 or even top 3. Introducing by DJ Shadow. That's the one. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for reminding me of DJ Shadow, dude. That takes me back to high school. I loved DJ Shadow, and I got to see him DJ a couple times.
It was in the early hip-hop movement that he got popular, but I feel like a lot of people need to go back to that album, man, because that album, one, just texturally is amazing, but compositionally, like the way he arcs each song is ridiculous, man. Like, whoo! Yeah.
We're getting some good stuff in the chat too. Brian's been listening to Low End Theory, Fela Kuti, Voodoo, and McCoy. Is that McCoy Tyner, the real McCoy?
At McCoy, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Watching a clinic from George Duke the other day, and George Duke is actually going over that McCoy method. A lot of people count George Duke out as a piano player in the like Herbie, Bob James, Chick Corea conversation. A lot of people kind of put George Duke to the side. George Duke was that dude, man. There's a clinic of him playing that McCoy stuff, and he's killing, like straight piano and yeah. Bad.
I love George Duke, man. That stuff with him and Billy Cobham, like the Live in Japan.
Okay. So.
Oh yeah, the stuff with Schofield.
Yeah.
And
so
Xanawal.
That's the only, not the only. That's some of the only 70s fusion that I can listen to. Is George and a lot of the Billy Cobham stuff. The only reason is because they were not taking themselves too seriously, right? And when you hear the Billy Cobham George Duke band, they were clowning on stage. Like those live gigs, dude, they're being idiots on stage, but playing really insanely complex, intense music. But they're just giggling.
You're not into like the Tony Williams, like Emergency.
It's cool, but that it's not.
You're right. It's not as like kind of fun. It's serious. It's like burning.
Not down home, you know.
Yeah.
Because George could still give you some funk. Cobham could still give you some funk, you know. Tony didn't come up in that. Tony already sounded like himself in the 60s, you know? He already sounded exactly how he was going to sound. He just elaborated his vocabulary in the 70s. Cobham and George could actually play some pocket, you know what I mean? And like even the Herbie stuff in the 70s, there is nobody who can play the right hand synth with the left hand on the pitch bend thing like George, man. George, that was an entire, like that's Louis Armstrong on the trumpet. It's that level of greatness with just the synth and the pitch bend thing on the left hand.
He also had that like whammy bar thing on the clav.
Clav too. Yep. Man, and yeah, it's like there's a funness to the Cobham Duke band, that there's a funness and a funk that you don't really hear in many other places. Like, yeah, the Headhunters had funk, but they were more ethereal with. Did my camera run out?
It looks like whatever device is running camo, maybe.
Hold on. Oh yeah, it's because my phone died. Hold on. Let me just move my webcam. I got you.
No problem.
All right, we're gonna suffer a little bit of a. That better. Yeah. All right. There we go. We're gonna suffer a little bit of a high definition loss, but I'm sure you guys will survive in the chat.
No problem. And while you're getting that set, everybody, we're putting a survey in the chat that's just letting people know, we're looking for your feedback about this event. It's got a few questions that will be helpful for future events. So if you find some time, please fill out the survey. And yeah, we were talking about George Duke. I was just going to say, it's also amazing watching him play and do all the pitch bending and everything, and then like sing along with like a Frank Zappa tune where he's singing like lead as well. Like he was insane.
Yeah, was it wrong? Did it?
Exactly.
Oh, was it?
Inca Roads, baby. Oh, you knew exactly which one I was talking about. That's so great.
Come on. I mean, that's the thing is like musically, and this all gets filtered through the drumming. I'm bringing it back around to drumming. Everybody in the chat, relax. I'm bringing it back around to drumming. All of this music stuff and all this life stuff, inevitably it gets filtered through your playing, whether you know it or not. Like the reason why I play the way that I do is because I'm happy as shit most of the time. But it's like it's an aggressive happiness, I'll say. It comes from being in a really
drumming.
Yeah. Like it comes from being in a dark place, coming out of that dark place and being grateful for everything, but also constantly fighting off that voice in the back of my head that wants to be down about stuff, Like I tweeted the other day, I said aggressive positivity, and I legitimately might start like a merch brand called Aggressive Positivity, because sometimes you got to be aggressive about it, Positivity and joy doesn't always come just without willing it into existence. Sometimes you actually have to be very aggressive about being happy, So all that gets in my playing, man. Listening to George Duke instead of a bunch of Return to Forever, like listening to the Headhunters instead of Snarky Puppy, listening to Zeppelin instead of like, Neil Young or whatever, you know what I mean? Like all the music that I choose to listen to, there's a presence about it. There's an aggressiveness to it, and there's a joy to it, Not saying that any of the other music doesn't have that, but it just doesn't resonate with me the same way,
I think that's, it's a brave thing to say, like to pick sometimes to pick between one or the other to kind of to develop an identity in some sense,
right.
As an artist. It's challenging.
You talking about to pick one, like to pick one what? What do you mean?
Oh no, you were saying like instead of listening to Headhunter or Return to Forever, listen to Headhunters. You're using those as like examples of choices that maybe you've made that have turned your your like listening ear into your playing personality.
Sure. Most of the jazz that I listen to is not that modern. I'll listen to some 80s Wynton, some 90s Branford and stuff like that. Other than that, I'd keep up with it. You know, I know about Christian Scott. I know about Sean Jones. I know about Kamasi and all that, but I'm not really listening to that much of it because it just doesn't resonate with me that much. I'd rather listen to the Coltrane Quartet catalog is enough to spend a lifetime on. You know, why would you sell yourself short of just that? You know, if you really want to get into straight ahead and like what it means in an epic cosmic perspective, just the Coltrane Quartet, you could devote yourself to that, and that's an entire life of study. You know what I mean? So I really zone in on the stuff that I like while sort of keeping tabs on everything else, just so I'm not out of touch. You know.
Who's your biggest straight ahead influence in terms of behind the kit?
Straight ahead influence is definitely Elvin.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Elvin, there's a lot of calculated accidents with Elvin, you know? There's a lot of like it's semi autopilot, but it's like, I'm trying to think.
Like to me, Elvin had this like amazing sloppiness to him where like that sloppiness actually was the coolness, like, and everyone talks about how like African his swing was, because it was all like kind of 12/8 bass rather than
I mean, it's to the Africanness. Once again, I feel like a little bit of it is an accidental autopilot, because if you have ride cymbal pattern ding 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 ding, if you're not thinking to yourself like, okay, I'm only going to play with my hand exactly an accent that should go somewhere on the snare drum, right? If you're just playing the ride cymbal, you're going ding 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 get bang, right? That the African thing that people talk about, I think it's honestly a little bit of that, and I think it's more just, I mean, you see his posture when he plays, right? That Elvin posture when he plays is very he's like a gremlin, right? So I think a lot of it is just his inner thoughts kind of going, you know what I mean? It's less like I'm going to play the middle of the triplet, less of a calculated thing and more just his soul kind of just on autopilot speaking. You know what I mean? I say autopilot as a good thing, by the way. I don't mean it as a bad thing. I mean like not thinking at all. You know?
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like that's some of the best music is the freest music, and you're kind of going on the positivity thing. Like when people lose their, and I struggle with this personally, is when I'm thinking, if there's someone in the audience that I'm like, oh man, I gotta like show this cat that like, you know, I can play, or like, you know, I really gotta impress this band, or I gotta, you know, I stiffen up and I'm not, the flow isn't there.
Okay, so I'm gonna draw a very giant parallel to what you just said. I'm gonna draw a very giant parallel. I'm a happily married man, but there's a philosophy with men attracting women, right? Now, I've never put any of this into practice because I've known my wife since we were 17, right? So there's a philosophy, and this works with anything else in life. This is why I'm bringing this up. I've had moments where I'm on the gig and there's insert famous drummer in the audience here, and my initial reaction is like, oh shit, you got it, you know what I mean? You got to do your thing, or like at least make them, you know, I've played entire sets with Cleary in front of Dennis Chambers, like there, like 10 feet from me, right? So instead of going like, oh God, I got to figure out what I can do to impress Dennis Chambers because he's right there, right? What you do is you do your thing relentlessly, and the famous person or drummer or audience member that knows that you're probably trying to impress them, they'll come to you. You know what I mean? If you relentlessly do your thing, then it's inevitably, you don't have to come up to Dennis Chambers or whoever's in the audience after the gig and be like, hey man, thanks for watching the set, you know, it was really great to see. They'll come to you. If you relentlessly do your thing and like get into your bag, whatever it is, if it's playing completely simple, they'll come to you because they'll hear what you're doing with authenticity and honesty. You know what I mean? Because I've definitely been in those situations where I've tried to impress. You know, I played a gig in front of Spanky one time. You know Spanky, George McCurdy, Philly, right?
Yeah.
So I've played a gig in
Good
front
friend of ours.
Yeah, he did some events for us.
Okay, yeah. So I played a gig in front of him, and it was with Cleary. I'm not going to play Spanky-esque chops on Jon Cleary's gig, you know? So I spent about the first 20 minutes of the gig definitely doing some shit I should not have been doing on the songs, and like trying to get that little reaction out of Spanky, because he was sitting on the side of the stage, and I was trying to make him go. I was trying to get one of those out of him, right? And nothing was working. So eventually, I went the other route. I said, "Man, just play the gig. Don't worry about him," you know. And then 2 more songs go by. I forget Spanky's even there. I don't care. 2 more songs go by, and I'm in there. We get to the second line song where I'm playing the cowbell and the kit, and I'm going, and then just out of habit, when I'm kind of really into it, I kind of tilt my head like this sometimes, and then I open my eyes, and Spanky's over there like, you know, like I what I wanted to happen happened when I stopped trying to make it happen. If you get what I'm saying, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
That parallel with courtship and all that. Like, if you're trying too hard, you're gonna spook the other person. You're like, whoa, chill, man. If you're trying too hard, your intentions are gonna be shown. But if you just do your thing, you'll inevitably attract the attention of who you're trying to attract in the first place, because you're being your best self in however ways you can. I just realized my camera is like wild blurry. Let me fix that.
That's all right. Everything you were saying was coming through loud and clear.
We're better now. All right, yeah. So just being yourself relentlessly, and that's not to say that you should be super loud and aggressive, like, I only play 2 and 4. You know, like, you shouldn't do that. But if that's who you are, then just lean into that, you know? Just don't overextend yourself to where you're like trying to preach the gospel to everybody. But at the same time, like, Mike Mitchell's thing is chops, right? But Mike Mitchell's thing when he's playing chops is like pure joy when he's playing like that, you know.
Nobody does it like him.
That's where all that vocabulary comes from. It doesn't come from him trying to impress other drummers. It comes from genuinely loving the instrument and playing that way, you know. It's the same thing with Steve Ferroni or Questlove. They definitely love playing like that, and that's why they have for years, you know.
Well, AJ, this has been so awesome. Like, if I just look back at the night where we started, going through your process, seeing all the magic, and you giving us all those little pieces of gold in the studio, and then jumping over to the New Orleans stories and hearing you play your feels and everything, it's just been amazing. And you're such a giving person, like 100%, and we all feel that and truly appreciate it.
I have no choice but to be giving, man, because I had everything, not to anybody's fault. I had everything taken away from me in COVID, and now I'm just starting back. So every day I step in here, it's like, all right, let's do this, you know. There's no.
Yeah, well, I think that's what Brendan saw in you when he saw the Instagram campaign that you really started getting rolling and everything. This is so perfect for having you today at this event, just because it's right time, right place. So I'm so glad we were able to connect. Please remember that you can find AJ on all the socials. We dropped them in the chat.
AJ,
and also, yeah, let's see. And there's let's see here. I got your website. People can check out. And yeah, it's just thank you so much. We're gonna kind of call it on the official event time. Thank you again. You've been so generous with your time too.
It's all good.
And yeah, and it's just it's so great, and we're all looking forward to seeing you in person when you make it back to Philly, because we know you will.
Oh man, I'm gonna
get you that pizza.
I'm gonna do a man versus food episode in there when I get there again, man.
On me, buddy. just hit me up.
Yeah.
And the birch beer that they got in there too, that's another like East Coast secret. They don't have birch beer in many other places except the tri-state area, man. That birch beer in there, ooh.
I'll give you a little secret. There's a new craft brew pub in that same parking lot. It's some of the best beer in the country.
Really?
Yeah, Tired Hands.
Tired Hands, okay. All right,
Yeah,
well
if you're into that craft brew stuff.
that's been one of our main spots. That's been one of the, like they book a lot of New Orleans bands, so it's really good. I'm sure I'll be back there at some point. It's gonna be an epic hang next time we're there.
Yeah, buddy.
Make sure to get some sleep the night before that we. So you know what I mean.
There you go. There you go. All right. Well, AJ Hall, it's been a pleasure. Again, everybody, we're gonna probably hang on a little bit. If anybody wants to turn their camera on, unmute, hang out for a little bit. We'll be doing a little bit of post hang. And remember to be on the lookout for our event coming up in March. Our big quarterly Philly Drum Project presents will be announced. Our artist will be announced very soon. So please keep in touch. Thank you so much. Thank you for supporting Philadelphia drumming. We love you guys. This is super awesome. And
Peace out, my
we're going to
peeps.
turn the recording. Yeah, thank you, AJ. We're going to turn the recording off and
Peace.
let's open it up. I'll turn off these spotlights.